Hello and welcome to Man's Model Moments from amongst the boxes. That light is a little bright, but we'll go with it for now. Anyway, good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining me. Maria has winged her way to Barcelona this evening. Well, earlier today, she just landed about half an hour ago. And I thought, what better way than to spend my evening than with some of my favorite people in the community. So thank you guys for joining me. Thank you to those of you who came and watched the video that I put up half an hour or so ago. Yeah, I thought I've got a few things to share with you. So we'll get into some of that. As always, if you are new here, if you want to make any comments or questions, please do put them in the chat. Use capitals. Notice I'm getting reflection off one of my boxes. There we go. This wasn't actually here before, as an aside. I've had to set my computer up again because it was all packed away. So hence it's all now set up, and that was containing it. This is actually part of my mesh Wi-Fi thing. I'm actually hardwired here, so it doesn't really matter. But yes, anyway, for those of you who are new and want to ask questions, make comments, etc., please put them in capital letters, not a whole question, just question or QQQ, just so that I can pick it out of the chat as I'm going, because those of you who know me know I will tend to get distracted and go down rabbit holes, and I do kind of get lost a little bit with the chat sometimes. So that just helps focus it a little bit. So let's see, who do we have? We've got Ian Ellison, David Markey, I'll speak tonight, Mario Selber, Gary from Gremlins Modeling Mayhem, Stephen Kessel, Stuart, John Christmas, Jim Aldcott, Edward Williams, Oliver Sjoberg Photography. I probably murdered that, apologies. Sounds like it might be a Swedish or a Scandinavian country that Oliver comes from there. Do let me know. And does anyone mind answering a quick question about varnishes? I'll come to you in a second, Oliver. Ian Ellison, I think I've already mentioned. Indy R1 and Paul Oldfield, John Axcale Modeling, and I think that's just about caught me up. Oh, Phil and Andy Freeman. Welcome, one and all. So just going back to Oliver, if I'm planning on using MIG oils and panel lines for weathering, etc., should I use an acrylic-based gloss coat or an enamel-based one? Providing everything is properly dried, Oliver, it shouldn't really make a difference. An enamel-based one. So the thing is with any paint, using paint together with varnishes and things, generally, provided the coats are completely cured, and the coat that you're going to put over it doesn't reactivate it in some way, then you can pretty much use anything. Having said that, some paints will reactivate stuff. So it's a little bit sometimes of a lottery. But generally, if you're using something like an oil based or an alkyd based, white spirit based paint or something, it's better to switch between solvents, between layers, effectively, again, providing they're all cured. If they're still wet, and by wet I don't mean actually physically wet. But if they've still got some of the solvent leaching out of the paint, you'll get into problems no matter what you use, no matter what that is. But generally, if it's cured, then you can apply something over the top. And if you're using a different solvent base, then you don't get interaction between them. So you sort of seal it, with alternate layers. Generally, though, again, it depends on method of application. If you're brush painting something on, it's much different than spray painting, right? So most spray paints, like rattle can spray paints and clear coats, will be quite aggressive. Yeah, and that top coat can easily activate a layer underneath it, were it not a spray. But because you're spraying and you're laying down a mist effectively, so the paint is just like coming and settling on top and then evaporating, and the solvents are quite volatile, so they evaporate quite quickly. It doesn't have the contact time to reactivate it as much. If you're dragging a brush across something, that's different, right? It's a bit like a sharp edge, like a blade. Yeah. If you just not press, but if you just put a scalpel on your skin, it won't cut you. No pressure, just literally just rest it on. If you don't have any pressure at all and just draw it across, if you move it, it'll cut you. So the moment you introduce motion into things, it changes stuff. So generally, this is why I like Pledge, because it's a different set of solvents. So it's an ammonia-based solution, which doesn't reactivate an awful lot of stuff. So it doesn't matter whether you've got a alkyd, i.e. enamel, or acrylic, i.e. water-based emulsion or lacquer. It doesn't interact with it. But the best thing to do is to get some scrap plastic, paint that with whatever you're going to paint, and then cover it with whatever you're going to cover it with in terms of varnish, because people will give you recommendations, and however good those recommendations are, they're not as good as actually just trying it, testing it out. So if you test it out, you can see if you're going to get into any problems, because I don't think any paint manufacturer really publishes absolutely everything that's in their paint. Generally, it's not needed if it's not hazardous. You don't have to say exactly what's in it. You can just say something like non-ionic surfactants, for instance, which tells you almost nothing, right? Generally, they're not going to be a problem, but they can be vague. And they want to be vague because they want to preserve their IP. So that may not be hugely helpful, but as long as you leave it to give that, I would say if you're going to top coat a model, always leave at least a day, 24 hours after painting it for that paint to fully dry and cure. If you can leave it longer, that's great. But a minimum really of 24 hours is needed for all of that solvent to leach out. Because whenever you put a top coat on, you're trapping whatever is underneath, right? And if you have outgassing afterwards, which is what it's called, outgassing, because the solvent leaves as a vapor or gas. So the more cured, I won't say dry because that's misleading, but the more cured the paint is, and whatever layer that is, the better it's going to be. And the name is Swedish. Okay, so I was right. That's good. I'm glad to know that my years of managing the Nordics has not gone amiss. Indy R1 says that broad comparison on accuracy of paints just confirmed what I've seen so far. Can't go by any recommended color. You need to see/try and decide the shade for yourself. Yeah, I was actually very surprised. I didn't expect the mixes that I'd made so far to come top. Literally 9 times out of 10, there were a couple of instances where Vallejo, I think I showed, Gunsangyu actually colors are pretty good. If I had to choose a brand you know, that I think would probably give me accurate colors. I don't have a huge range of Gunsangyo colors, because the other thing with Gunsangyo in Europe is availability isn't that great. But actually, and this is one of the reasons that I originally went into cataloging my paints and seeing what they look like actually on a subject rather than just, you know, what it says, is because I don't care about brand, I care about results. So I don't care if my paint that I'm using is going to be Army Paint or Pro Acryl or Reaper or Humbrol or Tamiya or whatever. The other properties of the paint for me are more important. So that's one of the reasons I like Outlaw, is because the other properties of the paint are excellent. Some of the color shades actually aren't, I don't think, aren't that good, you know, in terms of their accuracy, inverted commas, to the kinds of standards that are out there. But you can adjust them. You can mix Outlaw paints. I know that they are airbrush ready, but you can still mix them. You can still do pre-shading or post-shading with them. And somebody who identifies as the Apache helicopter, which I appreciate, has heard nothing but good things or great things about Gunsangyo paints. Yeah, I think the only thing about them is availability in Europe. I don't know what it's like generally in continental Europe, but in the UK, it can be a bit hit and miss in trying to get hold of them, you know. Mr. Hobby leveling thinners. It's one of the reasons I got, you know, Made Man's Magic thinner as a direct replacement for Mr. Hobby thinner, leveling thinner, is because it's difficult to get hold of. You know, it tends to come into stock and then it goes out into the world, and then that's it until the next import comes in, whenever that might be. And with global shipping as it is at the moment, you know, can be very, very hit and miss. Good evening, Craig. Good to see you. Paul Oldfield has a question. What do you generally do with your finished builds? Do you have cabinets, shelves, or go to exhibitions, etc.? So, Paul, this is one of the good things about having a model shop, is that I can throw them all in the window, which is where I think all of the builds from the channel over the past, well, since I started the channel a couple of years, have gone into the shop window. My other builds, I do have some cabinets out in the garage, which I have yet to clear and pack. But yeah, they generally go in cabinets. Some of them, so when I started sort of really, not professional, but getting into more involved builds, let's say, I was actually showing at model shows. I did enter a few competitions and stuff. A lot of those, some of those I've still got, 72nd scale stuff mainly. But a lot of them got broken because taking stuff to shows is inevitably going to break your models, particularly aircraft, for some reason. Well, I mean, it's not for some reason, it's because they're quite delicate in terms of their undercarriage. So it doesn't take much to break an aircraft model. AFVs can be a bit more robust. It depends what you do with them. So yeah, that's what I've tended to do. When I first started modeling, they all went up on the ceiling, of course, suspended from fishing line, and occasionally dive bomb me in my sleep. Jim says most paints I use do what I need. That's why I use them. Video sums it up perfectly regarding color accuracy. Yeah, I mean, I'm very fortunate, and so one of the advantages, benefits, if you like, of having a YouTube channel, so something I didn't benefit from a couple of years ago, is the community, is all of you guys, the people watching, and I've had people reach out to me and you know, provide paints for me, like the MIG ammo paints that Phil sent me, Finsbury Phil, that is, and Casey, who is viewer C, who I mentioned on the Luftwaffe video, who has a spectrophotometer and is able to make reflectance and scattering measurements of paints, which is, you know, something that 99% of people won't have. A lot of model companies, paint companies, won't even have that kind of technology. So I'm very fortunate that I have access to that through a viewer. I'm actually working together on, he's putting all, I mean, at the moment he's putting all the ICM paints into his database. He's got Tamiya, he's got the Model Air, that's how I benefited from that. So I will be doing Tamiya and Vallejo mixing videos in the future, in the same way that I'm doing the ICM ones. And maybe in 2025, I may actually be putting an app out. It'll be the most accurate color paint mixing app globally, if we can get it working. Very, I mean, it's at the moment it's an idea, right? So don't string me up if it doesn't happen, right? And the main thing is Casey's work, is the amount of work that has to go into creating all of these the measurements. I just realized you got this is a label of where this is going when it moves. So it doesn't normally have a big sticker on it saying, in this case, conservatory, which is where this is going to end up, unlike the desk, which is going to the garage. So it has a label on here. Show you that there. There we go. Let's go in the garage. So yeah, the app, there'll be a couple of aspects to it. One will be being able to virtually mix paints and have an LAB derived, or well, actually goes through the more complex reflectance and absorption characteristics of the paint. But the output is LAB. Obviously, it'll have an RGB approximation shown, but it'll be the most accurate in terms of being able to predict. So instead of having to, as I did for all of the prior paint videos, physically like work it out and mix the paint and then measure it, you'll be able to do it virtually, get a good idea, and then mix the paint, you know, once you've got what you want. So there's that. And then the other side of that will be something that will actually mix for you. So you'll give it the LAB. It'll have to be LAB. Hex values, RGB values are useless paint mixing. So not useless, but they are misleading. So like with the app that I mentioned, the Real Color Mixer app that I showed in a couple of videos, it doesn't give accurate results. So if you go by its mixtures, and the mixtures are quite complex sometimes, you know, like 1% of one color. It's like nobody's going to be able to measure 1%, because this was the thing I was saying is, and yeah, well, hexadecimal values are no good. Hexadecimal values are just RGB values. So they're all based on an equal rendition of each of the R, G, and B. Now, that's not how our eyes work. So you will get results that look odd. So yeah, nobody should use RGB for mixing paints. Obviously, for screen stuff, you know, here on the screen, it's different because that is red, green, and blue dots. If you look up at the screen here, there's no, you know, my skin isn't, well, it looks rather yellowish actually with the reflectance there. If I go back a bit, so it's not shiny. I need to turn the contrast down on that. But it's not flesh colored with a bit of pink and like red on the lips and stuff. You'll go up and there'll be red, green, and blue dots in different amounts. Same with any screen, you know, and it's creating that illusion for us because of the way our eyes work. But yeah, paint doesn't work that way because it's not emitting light. You've got to think your screen is emitting light. A paint doesn't emit light, it reflects light, which is different. So anyway, at the moment, it's just an idea. I've got some quotes for app development because I am not an app developer. Casey's providing the data and the raw Python script, and then Freelancer will actually make the front end. So the other part of it will be, you give an LAB value. There are tools to convert hex codes or RGB codes to LAB values to give you, an idea of what that should be. So, so there's that. But also you can use LAB values published for standards, for instance. And then it will come up with a mix that will do that. One of the things I want it to do is not give, a 10:6:1 ratio of something, because that's a pain in the ass, right? That's one of the things I want to do in my videos. And actually, one of the reasons I was surprised that my mixes were actually better than most of the paints made by manufacturers is because I really limited myself on, I didn't want to get really complex mixtures. So I think the most complex is just like a 3:2:1, that kind of thing. And most of them are less complex than that, obviously, which really limits you, especially when you're going to a restricted palette. Because I also wanted to have that restricted palette for reasons I've explained. I wanted to be cost effective and show the examples, which is quite challenging, right? It is quite challenging. And I don't pretend to understand all the algorithms behind that. But it'll be great if that happens. And I'm really looking forward to that. So it is but a twinkle in my mind's eye at the moment, but, bear it in mind. Maybe Christmas next year. Stuart has a question. What plans do you have for your channel next year? Like any more 24-hour builds? Oh, curse you. 24-hour builds. I'm going to pause that one for a minute because I realized that I have gone a little bit too far and I have missed a question here from Oliver. And that is, do I have a favorite scale and why? The short answer is no, not really. I used to be a 1/72nd scale modeler. And that was mainly because I wanted to build up a collection of aircraft that I could compare with each other, So I've always been into World War II. I really like Luftwaffe subjects. I also really like some American and Russian things. And just to get a scale of how they all are between each other, 48 scale is too big, really, to do that. With 72nd scale, you can get like one of everything kind of thing and compare them all. However, as I've progressed, 72nd scale is a little limiting, especially as you start to need these things. And 48 scale actually allows you to put a lot more into models. So I've really sort of transitioned more to 48 scale for aircraft. However, I've done a 144 scale submarine this year because 1144 scale is small, but for a submarine, which is a massive subject, it's actually quite, World War II submarine at least, it's quite manageable. I did that out of the box, obviously, but it does also, 1144 scale allows you to, if you want to, go and replace some of those out of scale items and with something that isn't too delicate. Whereas if you go smaller than that, it becomes really difficult, right? People building 1/350th scale ships, there's a lot of photo etch that gets involved then. For armor, I really like 1/35th scale. There's a reason it's popular. It's nice and chunky. You get a good size. You can really go to town on some of the weathering then. Again, I used to like 1/72nd scale because more on the wargaming side. Then I used to do wargaming in 1/72nd scale. So Do I have a favorite scale? Not really. I'm very substrate in specific, as a biologist would say. Mario makes a point, especially in armor builds, you need darker shades of the same color for contrast and shading, so you lose accuracy of the final color. Yeah, I mean, I didn't go into it in really any detail. I touched on it. That was that second point I was making in the accuracy point of the last part of the video. Was your model is not one shade. If it is one shade, it will look wrong, right? Because if you look at any full-size subject, it's not one shade. Even if it's painted one color, it doesn't come out as one shade. You also, because of the way light interacts with things differently at scale than real things, you have to create the illusion of shadow rather than relying on light to create shadows, because otherwise it will look wrong. It won't look in scale. It'll look like a model. And this is why we fill panel lines, why we have panel line markers or washes. It's not because the actual aircraft has a big panel line on it. It's to create the illusion of there being a panel line, that you get a little bit of light catching it. So you get the shadow there, or dirt accumulation, or whatever it is. So this is the silly thing I think about arguments about, oh, the panel lines in this are like trenches. It's like, well, that's because they're done to catch the wash. It's not because that's how they were. If you built something absolutely in scale, at 1/72nd scale, everything would be smooth. You know, even at 1/48 scale, it'd be smooth. Because if you don't have a smooth aircraft, if you think about flush riveting on aircraft was done to reduce drag from rivets, which stick up a couple of millimeters. A couple of millimeters in 1/48 scale is, what, 2/48 of a millimeter, 1/50th. So it's smooth, right? So that's the whole thing about the creative side of the hobby and the artistry involved, is we are not just replicating one-to-one. So absolutely, you create this tapestry of different shades. And generally, if I'm painting something, the minimum number of shades I'll use is 3. And 3, the triad, is used in a lot of painting as kind of a basis. If you think about mini painting, think about Games Workshop, of base, layer, highlight, and it's just because that's kind of, it makes our eye look at it in the way that it would be if it was full size. So, and obviously, the more shading you go to, the better it looks, the smoother it looks. That's where you get into, you know, honing your hobby and skills. So plans for the channel next year. I'll come back to this. 24-hour builds, no. Unless there is a massive, overwhelming request for 24-hour builds, I'm not doing any more of that again. It was a lot. It was a lot. One of the things I would like to do is, I have a plan, kind of an idea in my head. If I get to 25k views, not views, 25k subs by 2025, 25 in 25, I think it would be quite good to do 25 kits, 25 builds. So just over 2 a month for the year, 25, 25, 25. That's kind of quite a good, you know, it's got quite a nice flow to it there. In terms of the other plans for the channel, so once we've got this move, which apparently is happening first thing in the new year, we'll see. And that's a whole of it. I'll get to that. Don't worry. I'm going to be able to spend a lot more time at the shop. So my main regret over the past quarter is I haven't been able to devote the time I needed to the shop. This move has killed my December business. It really has. I've not been able to spend the time. I've barely been able to get in and do web orders. So, which is, it's crap. right? It's really crap, and I feel really bad anytime that an order is delayed or there's a problem with shipping or anything. Whereas when we're moved, I'll be able to spend 6 days a week in the shop. So I'll be able to turn around orders, like that. Next day, I send everything 24-hour tracked. If it's a paid for package, if it's a free shipping thing, it goes 48-hour tracked. If you spend over £75, whatever it is. Purely because of cost, because otherwise you just destroys your margin. But everything is tracked, so I want to make sure that people get prompt deliveries, which I'll hold my hand up and say hasn't been the case over the last 3 months, or hasn't always been the case. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not, depending on what has been happening at the time. When I've been running around after solicitors or moving boxes backwards and forwards. This computer has moved backwards and forwards to the office more times than I can think. Say the office. I think of it as my office as well as my work at the shop. Now, how is that relevant to the channel? Well, I'll be spending a lot of time in there, which means I won't be spending it at home editing. So that's why this computer is going to the shop, because I want to be able to edit in the quieter times in the shop. I've got a camera rig set up there already, so I do some of the shooting for unboxings and things there. I've got a work space that I can build there as well. So none of that will change. So the unboxings, you'll notice there's been a distinct absence of those of late, and that's because I used to have this workspace and the one at work. At the moment, I've got neither of those, so I just don't have the capacity to be able to regularly and routinely film any sort of builds. So obviously that will continue. I want to do more collaborations. Again, I've had a couple of buddy builds that I've started. One of them was with John Alec on the Kate, and I haven't been able to put the time in to do that. And it's not fair really on the other people. And I want to be able to get that sorted, so have that kind of fast turnaround to do more collaborations. I've got a bunch of things planned with other kind of non-modeling channels as well, related, but I won't give it away. But I want to do some of those things. So I want to kind of branch out. So I think the channel is, well, I hope, fairly unique in the modeling space, and I want to keep that going. So the full build reviews, out of the box builds, not necessarily painting, but just an unboxing build, have been popular. I think that's I'm going to commit to keep doing those. I can't guarantee everyone will be, because it's time, but not painting it at the end is certainly a big help in that. I still have the collaboration with ICM. They've been really good. I'm stocking the ICM paints. Unfortunately, Tom at Guideline Publications, there's only a few of them. They're the people who import the paints, and one of the ladies in his office broke her foot, meaning she couldn't come in and do stuff. So there's been a bit of a delay on that. But obviously, I'll be putting together those paint sets for the mixing videos. I want to do the same thing with Tamiya and stuff. I've actually been approached by Games Workshop as well. So I might be branching out in the shop into Warhammer as well, which will be a different demographic. And I'll probably then cover some of that on the channel as well, which, some people might not like. But, I always said from the outset, the channel is primarily going to be for what I want to do. So, and again, I've said many times, I think the two sides, the wargaming, mini painting sort of people and scale modelers, can learn a lot from each other. And some of the painting stuff I've been doing alludes to that. And I have had some exchanges with some miniature painter YouTubers as well. So those are kind of the broad strokes of stuff that I want to carry on with. branch out more of. I want to get the streams to be more regular. So the member streams particularly, I've only done one of them recently. I want to get that on to be a monthly basis. So yeah, there's lots of plans. It really depends on how stable, once I can get this moving and get everything set up, then how stable it is going forward. So, but unless there are massive, changes in, we find out the house has got radon gas or is subsidence or anything, which is all checked for, of course, and it doesn't, but you can never tell what's going to happen. But unless any of those things happen, fingers crossed, touch wood, should be a lot more stable and should be able to get that kind of a lot more regular stuff, both on the channel and on the shop side. So, and hopefully, coordinate those a little bit better. Yes, for that, yeah, it would be a paid for app. I mean, not a lot. It'll be like a couple of pounds tops. But obviously, there is an investment because obviously it's a freelancer that will be developing the front end, the actual app, which costs money and quite a lot of money. So there has to be some sort of attempt, at least, to make that pay for itself. For say it costs £1,000 to develop. Again, I've no idea if that's a realistic. I've had some quotes, but obviously you don't know about escalations and stuff. Say £1,000, and you charge £2 for somebody to download it. That's 500 people need to download it for you to break even. So, that's quite a lot. I mean, I know in the app world, people get thousands of downloads, but we're not talking about a Candy Crush or something. We're talking about something to mix paint with. So it's quite niche. So we'll see. I mean, if it did get to that point, so if it cost £1,000, I got 500 people to download it for £2. I would be all for reducing the price of it. But obviously, because I want to make it as accessible as possible. But then also you don't kind of want to piss off the people that did it in the first place, because they're the ones that made that possible. So I'm not sure how that will work. But again, it's only an idea at the moment, so we'll see. Another question, if I may. Can I paint directly onto the plastic, or do I need a primer? Everyone seems to be spraying Everybody seems to be spraying a black primer. That's not an easy phrase to say quickly. If so, what's the best primer? Okay. So a lot of people, and again, I'll cover this in my beginner series, the man's model method, which again, I know a lot of people have been waiting for. It's because I need to have a space to be able to do it and map it out. I'm also waiting for airfix for some stuff. A lot of people wash their kits, and airfix advise you to wash their kits. I don't wash kits. Okay, I only wash a kit if it's obviously got release agent on it, and that's because most kits these days, the technology's changed, right? You used to spray release agent on your mold so that the plastic didn't stick to it, and it was easier to get high throughput. Now that tends to be incorporated in the plastic itself, and it doesn't really make much difference whether you wash the plastic or not. You can give it a wipe over with isopropyl alcohol before you paint, which will remove any grease. The main thing is grease, and obviously release agent is a type of grease. Or a non-sticky agent. Greases tend to be that way. Now a primer, and again, I'll talk about spray primers, because If you're thinking of a brush-on primer or a Vallejo type acrylic primer, forget them. They're garbage. Some people might get good results, but they are not good. And that's because of the way they work. And I don't want to get too sciencey, but I think I've explained before that aqueous acrylic emulsions, of which an acrylic primer is still an aqueous acrylic emulsion, right? It's like a bowl of wet spaghetti, right? So if you imagine you've got a saucepan, your cooked spaghetti, cold obviously, and your spaghetti's all in there. The spaghetti is the acrylic binder, right? They're long chain molecules. They're already polymerized. So the way that they stick to things and form a coat is by basically making a big mess. All the spaghetti all bunches up and forms your binder, binds everything down. So if you can imagine, if you got that saucepan of spaghetti and you spread it across your table and then you left it to dry, that is equivalent to painting. That's equivalent to brush painting paint. Talking about a molecular level, right? When it dries, the spaghetti all mats together and forms this hard mat which is stuck to the table. But it's only stuck there because of all of its like sticky nature and its gloopiness. It's not actually, there's no adhesive between the paint, the binder, and the table. So it's still possible to it might be hard, like chiseling Weetabix off a bowl when it's dry. It's difficult, but you get under it and it comes off in chunks, which is the same as happens with paint when it pulls and flakes off and comes off in pieces. A spray primer, and I'm talking about a rattle can primer or something with a lacquer base, a hot solvent. By hot, I mean chemically hot, something that will actually melt the surface of the plastic a little bit. It's a bit like melting the surface of your table. So imagine it's an acrylic table or a plastic table or a vinyl worktop. If you melted the top of that and then did the same thing with your spaghetti, so that the spaghetti is actually embedded into the top of that, you can't chip it off without damaging the actual structure of the table. So that's the difference in terms of the primer and the paint, if you like. So this is a very circular, very elongated reply to your question, but so to answer your question directly, can I paint directly onto the plastic? Yes, you can. It's exactly like that analogy I just said of like putting your spaghetti onto your worktop. But the problem is it's likely it won't be as robust because it's not bound to it in any way. So if you paint any paint, it could be enamel, it can be aqueous emulsion. Once it's dry and cured, you can scrape it off with your thumbnail. And that's whether it's sprayed or painted on with a brush. If you use a hot solvent, so a lacquer paint or a rattle can, it's much, much harder to scratch it off. And that's because it's chemically bound to the actual surface of the plastic. And that's what primer does. So, primer does two things, right? So that's one thing that it does, is that it creates a very, very tough base. The other thing, of course, is if you're just painting onto the plastic, imagine you've got two different colors of plastic. So imagine it's an old Matchbox kit. I'll come to that in a second. If you've got two different colors of plastic and you're painting yellow, say, let's use the worst possible case, right? And you've got black and you've got red plastic. And you paint the yellow across it, it'll take more coats, or the color will look different on both of those because yellow is a terrible color. It's got terrible pigment density, doesn't have good coverage. And those two different plastics, well, they might have different properties, but assume the properties are the same, but they're different colors. They've got different reflectances. So it'll take a lot to cover the black, right? And when you cover the red, you may notice that it'll look slightly different. one on the black might look slightly greenish, whereas the one on the red might look slightly orangey. A primer gets away from that by making everything an even coat. So a primer does two primary things. One is it binds to the plastic and gives you a really stable base for painting. The second thing is it gives you an even coverage, and even surface for painting. So primer, although you can paint directly onto plastic, I have painted directly onto plastic, especially with lacquer paints, which work slightly differently and generally have better pigment density. You can. Even so, a primer is generally a good idea because it's creating your canvas, right? In terms of what color, black is good if you're doing something like an armor, like a tank. And the reason people use black is because if you spray over the top of black and you miss bits, like that are really like the back of the wheels and stuff, it's in shadow. So the black is acting as a shadow base for you. If you're looking at a light finish, people will generally spray with, well, depends on the color, but they'll spray with a lighter, mid-tone, usually a gray primer. Yeah, because you don't want, if you spray yellow over black, for instance, again, it looks slightly greenish, and that's because even with pure pigments, if you mix, this is a particular thing, again, Casey would be able to tell you all of the physics behind it. But if you mix black and yellow pigment, you end up with green, right? Which is predictable, but not necessarily expected. And that's something that will happen over a black primer with yellow. So if you spray yellow over black primer, sometimes it will look green. And that's because of the way it reflects light. So generally you would use a lighter primer. Gray is good because it's neutral, it's a mid-tone, and then you can build up or down from that. So you can do what they call a zenithal highlight with white. If you're painting very light colors, some people like white. Thing is with white is the opposite to black, right? You get nice, strong, punchy colors in the lights like yellow and red and pink and orange, but your shadows need more work. So it really, the answer, as my answer to everything is it depends. But in general, I would go with a gray primer unless I'm doing armor and I specifically want a dark shade, and then I'll go in black or dark shade. So it's a very long, very tedious answer, Paul, but I hope that at least gives you an idea of some of the possibilities. I'm not going to tell you how you should model. I can only give you the advice of both what I've done and the reasons behind things. Then you can make a choice, right? You can say, sod it, I don't care, I just want to paint the model. Then paint on the plastic, and that's fine. If you want it to last a long time, spray primer on because it will last longer, and it'll be easier in terms of spraying different colors and stuff. So, okay. I missed a part of the discussion, but there's an app called Model Color that's supposed to be a user-edited database of paint mix and mixing ratios, etc. No, I haven't, principally because I don't trust people. So again, most people don't understand the way that physics works, and there's no reason why you should, right? But even if you look at paint mixing apps, they often use RGB as a basis, which gives you wrong results, basically. As far as I know, there aren't any that use spectral photometric reflectance and scattering values, which is what this app that we may develop would. So, you know, oh, hobby color converter. Yeah, so John's just put, yeah, hobby color converter is, it's okay. It'll give you equivalences again. I used it and I got some really odd results sometimes, and I was just like, why is it doing that? Because it does use LAB or CIE lab color distances, but, and here's the thing, because I spoke to a developer of another app, they use values provided by manufacturers, and I don't believe manufacturers. And I'll tell you for why. If you look at the list of hex codes that Humbrol give you for its paints on their chart, and you actually measure the LAB values of paint, the same paint painted on something and then measured, they are not the same. So what is the point of giving you a code which isn't correct? It doesn't reflect the actual paint on a surface, which is why I started the whole process 2 years ago of, making my little paint chits, doing the coverage, getting into the whole rabbit hole that has led to here about the LAB values and now reflectance and scattering and all that kind of stuff, is because of that, discrepancy between, because the other thing is, of course, it's no use using a whole bunch of different sources unless you've got the same or a standardized calibrated instrument to do all the measuring. You may measure something with one thing and get one set of values. You may measure it another way and get a different set of values. You can't use those values together. And unfortunately, these apps, especially ones which are kind of crowd invested, you've got however many people are putting the information in, that many sources of data. So they could all be putting the same data in about Humbrol, putting data in about the same color of Humbrol, and they will all be different. How is that going to help you? Who do you trust? So again, I think the best thing is to get the knowledge and then make your own choices. At the end of the day, I've always said our hobby is very individual. You should make your own choices. You shouldn't be told what is correct. It might not be correct for you. So just looking down. Yeah, Barbados Rex does do some good stuff. They do indeed. I mean, it's one of the great things about our modeling age of today is that there is so much information about. And if you don't like what I'm saying, you can go and you can hear 10 different people all talking about something. And, that's a t-shirt range in the making. It depends. That's not a bad idea. One thing I will be doing next year is getting more merch. It's like proper merch, because I don't really have. I've got a Man's Model Movement mug, but I've only got one because it was a demo from Patreon, and it's really nice. But Patreon are rubbish for. They're supposed to do all the fulfillment. They don't work really, so I kind of put it to one side. But yeah, I think, yeah, use "it depends" as your catchphrase. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and again, I'll come back to the same point. Apache is like a database of ratios entered by users, which is fine, but are they verified at all, or is it just what one guy thinks? It's like, well, how is that any better than doing it yourself? I don't know. Fantastic. That's my primer question. Thank you. I'm a newbie after 4 decades away, so thank you. I'm getting primers. I didn't actually answer the last part, which is what are the best primers? Again, it depends. So one, you want a spray primer and a rattle can. I mean, I've got airbrushes. I airbrush my models. I don't brush paint them generally, unless it's for a video specifically on brush painting. And yet I would use rattle can primer generally because I don't really want to be putting primer through my airbrush. Like a lacquer primer through my airbrush. It's a pain. And why would I when I can use a rattle can? Rattle cans are easy. You don't prime that often. You tend to do priming in one go and that's it. So it's much easier to pick up a rattle can and do that. Right? In terms of what rattle cans are best, I can tell you what to avoid is probably better than telling you what to get. So things like Games Workshop sell decent primer, but it's about 10 times as expensive as it needs to be. So if you've got all the money in the world and you don't care, Games Workshop primers are pretty good, but you're paying through the nose for it. So for me, sorry, but if I do stock Games Workshop next year, I'm not going to be stocking any of their primers. I won't be stocking any of their tools because the tools, one, are generally crap. Two, they are about 10 times more than they should be. They're nippers, for instance, of garbage. And they cost like 30 odd quid. They should cost 3, literally. Never buy Games Workshop tools. For the same money, you can get much better tools. Squidmar did a video on this. In fact, he's done several videos on this, but he's done it on Army Painter as well. You have some pretty ones. Generally, again, I'm going off the subject here, but generally, model companies, whether they're in mini or scale, make bad tools. It's not their core business. There are a couple of exceptions. I did cover some of them on my modeling tools video, modeling tool set video. But as sets, generally, the Meng one has a really nice case, and I can't remember what else. I think the tweezers in the Meng one are good. So they'll have like 1 or 2 things which are good, but the rest of them are like, yeah. The Tamiya set is quite good, but it's expensive and it has stuff that you don't need. If you're an RC modeler, it's got screwdrivers and stuff, but the majority of scale modelers don't need those. So you're paying for things you don't use. And then the other stuff is, it's got some stuff which is okay rather than good. The AK set has a set of single bladed nippers, which are actually very good for the price point. But the rest of the stuff in there is a bit, and they're not the best single bladed nippers. They're just better than double bladed. So, why buy? If you bought 3 of the kits, you could get one decent kit out of it, but you'd have paid 5 times what you need to. So, which is why I end up doing my starter set, because it's cheap, it's got everything you need, and actually the tools are better than most of the things you get. I mean, Italieri, Humbrol, and Revell, never buy their sets. They're garbage, real garbage. Don't ask Moss about the again, it's not their core business. So what did they do? They had an association, a relationship with a company who must have seen them coming. Oh yeah, use our 3D printer, sell it. You can buy 1,000 units. They must have been laughing all the way to the bank, and then sell them. And because obviously Humbrol or Hornby didn't know anything about 3D printers, they bought them and then realized they were stuck with a real white elephant. I buy, airfix, and for me, the Hornby group as a whole, they should ditch some of the stuff on the peripheries, right? It seems like a good idea to sell, clippers and stuff, but if you're not making them, you're just buying in from somewhere else. You don't really know. You're looking at profit rather than the tool. You're not going to provide good value to your customers. Concentrate on what you know. They know about designing and making models. So Airfix have made great strides in the past 10 years on that front, and I applaud them for that, and that's what they should stick to. And they shouldn't start doing watches and other stuff. It's like, I get it makes them money, but concentrate on your core business at least first. Become profitable doing that. Branch out then once you've got the time and the staff and the money to do it. I got away from that point, as I always do. Again, if you're new to the stream, this is half of the course. I will go off on many tangents. But the best primer, so don't get Citadel primers. Army Painter do some decent primers. Again, they're a bit expensive. Don't buy really cheap, like pound shop spray cans, because they'll be rubbish. What you're probably best off with is a decent automotive spray. I use Autotech. I may even have some. Oh, here we go. I use Autotech. So this is Autotech Matte Black. Doesn't say it's a primer. Doesn't need to say it's a primer. They also do a grey primer and a white primer. So I tend to use the matte black spray paint. I think they might not do a black primer specifically. Don't buy etch primer. That's for metal. It'll destroy your models. But these sorts of primers, people are like, oh, automotive, you know, it's like, oh, it's not as fine as, that's rubbish. That's rubbish. If it's fine enough for a car, whose finishes are much, much nicer than most people's models, it's fine enough for your model. So the matte black paint, or the, oh, here we go. I have actually got, because I've been unpacking this box. Here we go. There's the grey primer. So it doesn't have to be grey primer for plastic. You know, a lot of, if it's grey primer for plastic automotive, it's really for vinyl. And you don't want that. Different formulation. These are hot enough, as in the solvents are hot enough. See, they've got their little solvent warnings there. And they need to be just hot enough. By hot enough, I mean they just need to react at the molecular level. Again, I'm not talking about, you know, it dissolving your plastic and melting it all away. But they'll be just hot enough to provide that strong bond, but fine enough in terms of the grind size on the pigment and the flow, all the properties and stuff that will give it a nice, thin, even coat. So something like Autotech, Halfords in the UK, I think, or what's the company, Rust-Oleum in the US, they all do decent paints which you can use as primers. Generally the automotive, you know, decent automotive stuff, not like I bought this for £1 from a pound shop, you know, and that will be like some thick, nasty stuff which might melt your plastic or gum up or your detail. So don't use filler primer, because that is designed to fill small, you know, panel lines and things. Don't get anything that's for metal. And don't buy the dedicated plastic primer, because it's just not needed. Generally, they're more expensive. The basic grey, white primer or matte black paint is absolutely fine for model making. So Manu says, also in figures, I liked first prime all over in black, and I sprayed with white primer from one angle to have contrast when I paint the uniform. So that is what I was talking about with the zenithal priming. So zenithal priming is a technique where you overall paint the Mini in black, or prime it in black. Then you use generally grey primer, and you spray all over from 45 degrees. And what that does is the majority of the Mini or model will be coated in grey primer, and anywhere like that 45 degree that's in shadow that the paint doesn't reach will then have a nice dark shadow. And then you use white and spray from about 10 degrees from vertical, and that basically simulates the light coming down, and that is really good for figures in terms of that gives you a natural gradient of how light is going to fall. And obviously if you were modeling a subject at a different time of day or looking into a light source, then you spray from that direction, and it'll show you, even if nothing else, if you're going to paint over that completely, it will show you where those highlights should be. So it'll help in actually then applying the paint afterwards. So that's what zenithal priming is all about. Question: does isopropyl alcohol go off, and can you use it for making sprue goo? No, it doesn't really go off, unless you're keeping it in some very strange environment where you're going to actually get some reaction with it. It shouldn't go off. No, it doesn't break down. I mean, isopropyl alcohol is pretty simple as a molecule. One of the things actually that I bought last year and never got a chance to do on the channel was I've got a bunch of, you'll have seen them before in chemistry, ball and stick models for molecules. And I wanted to show all of the like kind of different things. I'll probably relate it to paint, but you'll see when I do that, you know, water obviously is a hydrogen and two, sorry, it's an oxygen and two hydrogens, you know, dihydrogen monoxide. Very, very simple, very small molecule. Alcohols are a bit bigger, but they're still pretty simple molecules. So there's not a lot for IPA to actually break down to. The main thing is keeping it capped, because it will evaporate because it's pretty volatile. Okay, all volatile means is that it evaporates easily. Yeah, it's very simple. Can you use it for making sprue goo? No. Isopropyl alcohol does not dissolve plastic, polystyrene. To make sprue goo, the best thing to use is glue, cement, polystyrene cement, because obviously polystyrene cement works by dissolving the plastic and then welding it together. So it's designed to melt plastic. So it's a solvent, literally. It dissolves the styrene. Acetone doesn't work by itself. It's too volatile. If you can put plastic in acetone and leave it for a week, it'll still be plastic in acetone. It'll be weird and wobbly, but it won't dissolve. It's actually the butyl acetate in things like Tamiya that'll do that. Things like xylene and toluene will dissolve it. They're pretty nasty for your lungs. I mean, most of these solvents that will dissolve polystyrene, right, won't do good things for your lungs. That's, you know, carte blanche. They're bad for your lungs. Don't sniff them. HPI guys uses Kelton. I have no idea what that is. Oh, Krylon. Oh, okay. This is like Kelton. Never heard of that. Krylon. Yeah, yeah. He's the guy who builds his models on a towel. I mean, you use what you can, right? Yes, sponsorship is something certainly that I would like to pursue in 2025. If I can get to that, that would be great. But it's not easy getting sponsors for YouTube, because there's a lot of YouTube channels. Modeling is fairly niche, and you've got to have that kind of, you've got to get noticed by appropriate people, and then get some sort of return off it from the audience for it to be, I think, you know, viable. But yeah, a sponsorship would it would go a long way to keep the lights on, that's for sure. Right, well, that's the end of the current questions. So a couple of things I have to show you. I recently, okay, I'll go back a bit. So Wincanton, obviously where the shop is, where we're moving to, also has an auction house. And there was a recent auction, and it had some model kits in it. And I did bid on some. The one lot I really wanted, and I really wanted it because I wanted to do it for the channel, I didn't win. And it's because I put pre-bids on a whole bunch of this stuff because I wasn't sure I'd remember. And sure enough, I forgot. So I wasn't actually online at the auction, because it does an online version of the auction as well. You don't have to physically go there. And unfortunately, it went over my reserve amount that I put in. And I should have put there's a thing where you can put +1 where it will keep bidding for you. And I forgot to do that on this. And it was a bunch of old airfix stuff. It had the black prints, which is really hard to get a hold of. Certainly for the prices that I would pay for such a thing. They'll go for like £70 or £80 on eBay and stuff. And I missed that one, which was gutting. But I did get some interesting things, so I thought I'd show them to you guys. So one of them, which is one that I remember doing in my childhood, and I don't know whether any of you guys have seen this version of it, but this is a carded version of the Matador. So try to do this so you don't get the reflection. So the Matador and gun. So airfix obviously still do this. I think they still do this as a vintage classic, or at least they definitely have the molds, and you can pick these up in model shows and stuff. It's not worth a lot, but the carded version I've not seen for a very long time. When I was a kid, there was a charity shop in Lincoln that had a bunch of old airfix kits. You know, there must have been not first editions because they were carded or boxed, and they had some of these. I built my first Matador from that, so I thought that was quite cool. So this is where you open up the. Bear with me. I'm just going to try and lower the contrast. For one, that gives you a better view of the instructions, right? So the back of the card has all the instructions there. Okay, took me a while. The light is hanging on the wall because there isn't a light in this room. This house predates electricity, so because it's one of the things I'm looking forward to is actually having a light in the spare room. So the lights before in this room were separate lights, which are all packed away now. But because this ceiling is original, so it's the original plaster and lathe, which is why it has this huge bow to it, which you may not be able to see from there, but it's a listed building, so you can't touch that. So you can't put a light in the ceiling. So there are no lights. There's a light switch, but it doesn't go anywhere. So this is a hanging light because we were using storage, and because Maria's put a lot of her clothes in these big cardboard wardrobe things. She was trying to find stuff at night, and because there's no light in here, she couldn't find anything. So I had to put this light back up on the wall, which is handy for the stream. There we go. That's a little bit better, isn't it? There we go. That's more natural as well. There we go. I don't look quite as jaundiced now. So yeah, there we go. So you have the instructions on the back of the card. So there's a little bit of history for you there. I thought might be entertaining for you all. I have no intention of doing this. I'm going to put it in the shop in the second-hand section. So if you want to own this, check the shop out in the new year. It will be in the second-hand section. Another one, which, well, actually, I'll do the other airfix. The other airfix. I've got a lot of airfix. B26 Marauder. And this is not a red airfix. It's the green one. So again, something a little bit different. Now, unfortunately, when I opened this up, it doesn't actually have the Marauder in it. It's a bunch of bits, which was a bit disappointing, I must say. Not that I would have done it, but you know, it has the instructions, obviously. But I did think that box was quite interesting with the green airfix rather than the traditional red. I'll come back to more airfix in a second. I'll go to this one next, which I would have loved to do as a kid. Now, probably not. But this is a 72nd scale British quad gun tractor. So obviously you used to pull the 25-pounder. It's just the tractor. Still in its shrink wrap. It's a little bit split there, but it's still in it. The SG kit. I actually used to quite like these SG or ESCI kits. And I do like the camo on this one as well. But I thought that was quite cool. The other thing were several Matchbox kits. This one, the Siskin 3A. It's quite a nice little beast. Got a couple of schemes there. I doubt the decals are actually much cop these days, but you never know. Then we had the airfix 148 scale walrus recently. This is the 1/72 Matchbox walrus, and you can tell how old this is because look how faded, how sun faded that box is. That has obviously been on a shelf somewhere, like in a window or something, and it's just completely, I mean, all the colors apart from blue have just disappeared. Even the Matchbox is mostly completely eroded. And you can tell because the back of the box, which obviously wasn't in the sun, still has all its color. So there we go, the power of UV radiation. Totally bleached, yeah. But I also loved the way that Matchbox used to have these. If I can get the angle without the 3 colors. It's just, this actually open, so let's have a little look at how it looked like. Obviously you have the, that's kind of, that's actually silver, which for a fabric aircraft is a bit bizarre. Then you have grey, so it's one's silver, one's grey. There's not much difference between those two. Then you have the other wings, which were white, so you can see the difference between them. So the old 3-color Matchbox kits. Again, no intention of doing that. It will go up on the second-hand section of the store. And then this one, which I don't recall ever seeing in Matchbox's range before. So I'd be interested if anybody has seen this one before. But this is the Matchbox Morris C8 Mark II and 17-pounder. Now, these sort of 3-component kits were quite common with Matchbox, but I don't think I've ever seen that Morris and 17-pounder with the Jeep before, which was quite intriguing. Obviously, if that was a 35th scale, it'd be great. And of course, you got the little diorama there as well. Obviously, in 3 colors. This one is grey, light brown, and dark brown there. Yeah, I did like the little diorama bases that Matchbox used to do with its kits. I don't think Revell have this tooling. I could be wrong, but I would have thought they would have put that one out if they did. They've done the Puma, they've done most of the other ones, but I've never seen this one. So I thought that was quite interesting. And then I have a couple of Revell kits. First of all, though, I like what's in this kit more than the actual kit, and that is some original Revell Type S polystyrene cement. So that is quite something. I think I should have a little display case in the shop with, like, historic modeling things. It's full. It's I don't think it's been opened. I can actually open it without breaking it. Don't want to break it. There we go. Has it been used? No, it's still got the original seal on the cement, even though it looks like it's about half full. or the solvent has probably evaporated out of the crimped end or something. But there we go. I mean, it still feels, I wouldn't say liquid, semi-solid. It's probably just like slightly, it's probably sprue goo. I know. So that's that. That came in this, the Mayflower. Now, a lot of these, like old Revell toolings, still about. They still sell, you know, in just newer, flashier boxes. But I actually quite like this box with the, you know, the pilgrims there, the old Revell. I think that's a Revell America. I'm pretty sure it is. But yeah, an old Mayflower. And actually, I'm not quite sure when this kit was tooled. But if you actually look at the tooling itself, you do have some sort of planking detail here. I don't think it's that bad. So, you know, this is quite cool. I could be convinced to have that as one of my 12 Days of Modelmas kits. And then we come to this Revell kit, which is, I don't know about rare, but it's certainly not common. You do see examples come up on eBay now and again. Typically in the US, they go for about $40 odd or so. And that is the Robert E. Lee, which this particular boxing is from 1972, I believe. And it's a reasonably sized kit. You know, it's a fair old chunk of plastic. I must say, not as nice as the Mayflower, but obviously a slightly more unusual subject. Robert E. Lee. There's the finished model picture, or at least an artist's rendition thereof. So there we go, John. If you fancy doing that, well, in the next shipment. So those are kind of all of the. Well, no, actually, I do have some of those other airfix kits, which, again, some of these are still doing the rounds, but not these particular iterations. What's the other one? I think this is the most modern. No, this one I think is. And that is the tank transporter. It is that a Beatties? No. A shop called Pleasures, which sounds doesn't sound like a model shop these days, does it? Pleasures. But that is from a very specific time in Airfix's history because it has this logo, this oval logo, which they didn't have for that long. And I think that's the most recent one as well. I think that came, I think it was the late 70s, that one, or maybe early 80s. But it didn't have that logo for that long. It was quite a small box. It was a tank transporter. But that's probably maybe the least interesting of them. Next one is one I've sold in the shop as a second-hand kit before, but not in this box, and that is the RAF recovery set. And this, I think, is a 60s box. That looks very much like a 60s Airfix logo. together with the art, everything. In pretty good condition, this box actually. Looks pretty nice. So, and obviously it does come up. I'm not sure if it's currently tooled, but certainly it has been fairly recently. Of course, you have your, are you a member of the Airfix Modelers Club? Which at the time had these, see how I can show you this. If I put it behind, you can see. No, oh, there we go. I think you should just be able to see the punched out number, dot punch out there at the top. So they numbered them. 3037, this one. Not that that meant anything, I'm sure. And then the next two, again, common, or common enough kits. Oh. This one at least is a kit. The other one isn't. So this is just a box. So I looked at it. Oh, that's cool. And then it's actually got a sponge in it. It's like, yeah, thanks. So this is a BT's label, but for those of you who know BT's, I mean, BT's went out of business a long time ago, but it didn't have that label on it for a very, very long time. So again, 60s, or at least 60s, 70s. And then this one, probably the coolest box, is the RAF refueling set. Airfix 00 scale. Which actually doesn't even have the Airfix logo on it. So the again, getting too much reflection on there. You just see the does have the pictures of the other sets on there, including that emergency set that we don't actually have. So again, another quite cool thing. Again, the actual models inside them aren't special. But I think it's quite nice to see these old boxings, you know. Actually, I wonder if the tooling on it actually is any better than some of the modern ones, because obviously it would be a new tooling at the time. Yeah, actually, it does look crisper. No flash on that. Figures are still blobby, but there isn't flash on it. Even on these small parts here, they're thick, but and the plastic is slightly yellow. Actually, this is a good one to show it. There we go. There's a ladder there, which is pretty good for the time, you know, in terms of the scale and the tooling. Not bad. Get it back into the box without destroying it. So again, I'll probably put these up on the shop, obviously. Unless you want to buy a box, probably not that. I know some people do collect boxes, but you know, those old Airfix boxes are giving me flashbacks and making me feel very old. Nostalgia. So nostalgia is, of course, what most of the vintage classics line is built on. I think actually, if you can find these old toolings of them at shows and stuff, if they're not ridiculous prices, because often they are, It's worth getting them because they are the tooling is better. Now, obviously, they don't have the cartographic decals of the modern ones, but see, what I like about this is that it's pre logo. It does have the kind of scroll effect, but this is like an actual scroll, like it was on a scroll. Before they kind of stylized it into that logo, because that can't be that long after that when they've actually gone to the very kind of 60s looking logo part there. And just to emphasize that point, I got a whole bunch, because I do get quite a lot of rail people coming into the shop. There's quite a few rail clubs around. It also dates it by the price on these, again from Pleasures. So these are the old Airfix rolling stock models. So these, of course, all went to Dapol when Airfix. Not sure when it was when they folded or before that, but again, that is a pre-logo Airfix. So you can see it better here. Actually, look, where you've got it. It's like a scroll folded back on itself. You see, it was the princely sum of 70 pence from Pleasures. The cattle wagon there, and then it's the same, exactly the same thing, but in the later boxing. And actually, you can see this has better art. The art here is nicer, and this is kind of more modern in the 60s. But I thought those were pretty cool. So I've got a whole bunch of different ones here. This one actually doesn't contain the mineral wagon. It's got some engine pieces, electrical pieces in, but I think I do have some of the mineral wagons. I've got a whole bunch of cattle wagons. I think I've got like 5 cattle wagons. I have these Esso tank wagon, Esso Petroleum Company Limited. I don't think they paid a licensing fee to Esso at the time. And this is kind of how things have changed, because back then it was kind of advertising for Esso, free advertising for them, whereas now they'd ask for a licensing fee. So hence the differences. Another one of those. That was 55p. A smaller Pleasure, obviously. There's a mineral wagon, actually containing a mineral wagon this time. But there's a later version of that tank wagon. So they actually changed the art a little bit on that one. It's almost like, I think they zoomed out the art, because it seemed to be the same thing, but just zoomed out a bit. It's also gone up to 70p. Got quite a lot of tank wagons, mineral wagon, lots of tank wagons. A box of railway workmen. And again, this is from that time where they had the brief time of the oval Airfix logo. So this is a I think these are styrene rather than vinyl. Yeah, I think they are. So again, as I get quite a lot of railway models in, I'm sure they will be interested in some of these. This one, which I think is very cool. It's quite packed, this box. I mean, Just look at the instructions. Look at that for a logo. Again, proper logo, if you like. And this is the airfix turntable. HOOO gauge. 12 inches long. Just small box. It is absolutely packed full. You can see there is no room in this box for anything other than components. Quite weighty. I only have one of these. I don't know whether it was a rarer thing. And it's made of a very strange plastic. This is the, again, kind of logo. The airfix refrigerator van. I'm completely unfamiliar with all of these because I'm not a railway modeler at all. And I had a couple of pieces of rolling stock. This Pitmaster corridor composite in maroon, and finally an actual engine. This beast, 241p mountain. But it's funny because somebody was asking on the channel a while ago about, does anybody do plastic models of engines, not running rolling stock, just plastic models? And of course, this is. That's one of the sides there. A Revell have some, but I think after Kitmaster, there isn't an awful lot of other manufacturers making these sorts of kits. And then in there was also the ubiquitous Luftwaffe personnel, again from that time with the logo, and then some British and French artillery from the Napoleonic Wars, kind of randomly thrown in there. So, but I thought that was a bit of a blast from the past, something a little bit different for airfix, because of course they don't have any of those toolings anymore. They all went to, as I say, I think the majority went to Dapol. I don't know if anybody else got any of them. And then obviously things like the recovery set and things they still do. But yes, I think Googling that now would probably be a poor choice, at least for your internet browsing history. But right, bear with me because we're going to hear a crying dog, which usually means he wants to go outside. I don't particularly want to pick up poo, so bear with me. I shall be back very shortly. Okay, sorry about that. It wasn't, in fact, any requirement to go out. It was a request for food. So, so dog is now fed, and we are back. So yes, Pleasure's Toy Shop, no longer with us. It does indeed put a different spin on man's magic moments, for sure. I have one more thing to show you, which Matt from Model Minutes knew what this was. Moss did not. See if anybody knows this one. So these are micro models. 3-dimensional volumetric. You can see your workshop all in a cigar box. Building your own micro model museum. So this is unopened. So this it is sealed. Sticky papers. This would have set you back the princely sum of 3 shillings, including postage, for this. These are actually paper kits, card kits, micro models, like small scale. Obviously, I think this dates from the 60s, maybe even late 50s. But I'm not going to open it. I'll probably sell it because I have no use for it, and I'm sure somebody, would love to have, because it's mint in terms of, it hasn't been opened or anything. I mean, it's not mint in, it's a little bit worn because it's old. But if you know of anybody that knows and is desiring of any micro models memorabilia, I have this. It was actually just in another box in all of this stuff. So just an interesting one. Not sure when they went out of business. London EC4, British made. But yes, that was the. I do like auctions because they're kind of a bit of a lottery. You do end up with some things which you think, oh, that's good, and then you open them and they're full of sponges. But then you end up with other stuff which you think, wow, I've never even seen that before. That's quite cool. So yeah, that's. And again, if anybody has any interest in rolling stock, I have plenty of old airfix kits of them. Oh, thank you, Alex. Oh, see, it's a good name. See, there's a shop in Warminster. There's a post on the Warminster and District Faceache page. Well, I'll have to have a look at that. Pleasure Shop Warminster is probably a bit safer to Google than Pleasure's Toy Shop. So, but yes, Dave, it is pretty obscure stuff, I think. It's probably one of those things that if you know about it, it's just like, oh yeah, of course. But Moss was actually looking at these. He was trying to find them on scale mates, and it's just like, no. But Matt knew where they were from. Apparently, there's a page. Yeah, of course, there's a page devoted wholly to them. Oh, interesting. That. Thank you, Alex Moore, for that nugget of information. I'll have to have a look. Oh, and Pablo is back with us. Hello, Pablo. Are you come and say hello? Come on, then. Come and say hello to everyone. Come on, Pablo. No, he's gone off again. He's come back in, but he doesn't want to say hello. So now he's off again. He's gone. That was a very brief visit. Just checking I'm still here, and I haven't abandoned him, I think, because obviously Maria has gone to Barcelona, so it's just like, oh, you're not leaving the two, are you? Yeah, so that other box, this mineral wagon one contains, looks like a single pole, single throw switch. That some old, pretty solid state electrics, not electronics, electrics. Looks like a heat sink. Wow, that's chunky. That's a chunky transistor. So yeah, if anybody, I'll probably put them there. If anybody in one of the model clubs, rail clubs wants them, they're welcome to them. I'm not going to be able to sell anything like that. Now, there were a couple of questions that came up before. Apache had one. What's the one that got away that you wanted for the channel? It was the Black Knight, Airfix's Black Knight, which, I've talked about the Airfix figures before, and the Black Knight is one. It's not one that I particularly, have been craving for any time. But when I saw it on that, I just thought, oh yeah, that would be really good for the channel, because if I could win it in an auction, because it was a whole load of, and they were all bagged kits, so it wasn't like particularly, special stuff. So I thought, I might be able to get that for a reasonable amount. Quite happy to pay £40 or £50 for a whole lot. I didn't really want to spend £35–40 just to buy a Black Knight. Like going on eBay and specifically looking for it, kind of thing. But there'll be other things. It's not like we are short of things to do here in Mun's Model Moments. So, and then another question was, do you have any plans to build particular kits next year? Yes and no. So one of the first things I'm going to be building next year, other than the starter kits for the Model 6, I'm not kind of counting those, although they will count towards the 25 kits if I'm going to do 25 kits over the year. I'm not that stupid. Will be the Black Hawk, the 1/48 scale UH-60, the Special Forces Black Hawk from ICM. So that will be, I think, coming on its way to me sometime shortly from ICM. So I should get that in the new year, and that'll be one of the first things I build there. I've seen the video, the video instructions on it. It looks quite involved, but it looks quite nice. And I, as you know, I am not a helicopter modeler by innate need or want, but there's just something about it, kind of like black insectoid kind of beetle looking ugliness of that UH-60, which makes it appealing. It's the Black Hawk down kind of thing. So it looks pretty interesting. And if it's up to the scratch of ICM's other kits, then it should be a good one to kick the year off with. I do have the Airfix 1/24 scale Typhoon, which I may do as a series build. I don't know whether to hold off on it though and do it as part of the Man's Model Method series, because it would be quite a good kit, I think, to do on that. Also have again, I think it's 32nd scale, because I don't think Revell typically do 1/24th, but the Revell Typhoon, the car door one, which I thought might be a good one to do as a comparison with it, probably after the Airfix one, because the Revell one is a horrible old kit. It's kind of the same scheme as the 32nd scale Corsair. It's that carbuncle era. But I've actually done a lot of scratch building on that kit already. So I've scratch built the entire cockpit, because the cockpit that was there was garbage. So it's all made from like plastic. I think I might have made most of it out of stretch sprue, like really old school scratch build stuff. So I think that would be quite a good one on kind of like how you don't need to spend, you know, £100 on a kit to make a decent rendition of a subject. If you want, you can do that, but that's kind of a bit down the road on the method. So there's a couple. I've had those in the back of my mind for a while because I've had the airfix one for the best part of a year. I think I got it at I think that was Yeovil. I think I was Yeovil a year ago. I've had that one for a while. I've had the Revell one forever. It's a long time. So yeah, those two. Other kits that I want to do. I've got the airfix HC4 version of the Sea King, the Jungly. I've got a couple of those in stock, so I might look at doing that. I think it might be a good contrast to the other Sea King. I need to finish the Gannet. I've got the Gannet, which is 95% complete. I just need to actually put the wings on it. It's all done. I just need to physically put the wing fold on. And that's all done in Australian markings, which I had to make the decals for because they weren't in the kit. So there's a couple of things I've got. But in terms of kits that kind of really looking forward to, flak bait. I've got flak bait, ICM's Marauder in flak bait markings, which I want to do. And I'm going to modify that as it returning from one of its missions where it got absolutely hammered. So again, you know, I'll thin out some portions of the wing and the fuselage and, you know, put bullet damage in and all that kind of stuff. So again, as part of, maybe not the whole thing, but I think parts of a build could be used in the method series, if you like. So you may be seeing parts of builds from that in the Man's Model method series as demonstrations of that. And then if people want to go and see the whole build, they can then go and like know how that bit was done without me going through the entirety of the build for the method bit. In terms of other particular plans, or you know, to build particular kits, I have the Teleri F-35C, so I need to update my F-35 video. Obviously, the last one I did was the Tamiya review, so I want to do the F-35C from Teleri. I've already had a quick look. It's definitely better than the Orange Hobby F-35C. I don't think it's as good as the Tamiya or the Academy kits. It's good. It's an improvement on the A and B, but yeah, it's not quite up there. Thinking of Italieri, actually, one kit I do want to build is the 12th scale Lancia Stratos that they brought out just recently, because I love that car. It looked great in those rally colors. And come on then. Here we go. Here's Pablo. Pablo, say hello. Say hello to everyone. Go on, wave. Here we go. So that is definitely one that I want to do. So yeah, if I get to 25k and commit to doing 25 kits across the year, it's not going to be difficult to find kits to do, right? There are some really nice kits around, some really nice kits coming out. So I think that will be quite easy because we don't have the announcements from any of the model companies yet about what they're going to be doing. So again, that will be interesting. The other thing is obviously ICM have the Henschel HS129B, on their release list from this year for 2025. I love that aircraft. So when that comes out, I'll definitely be getting that and making that full build, full camo and everything, paint job. So that's what I definitely want to do. And obviously, when they bring out the Hampton, that'll be one that I'm going to look forward to too. I still have to get the Beaufort out, which is a really nice kit, and it's quite a nice build. I mean, my build of it was enjoyable, and it turned out okay. So I really should get that out. I broke the rear tail wheel, which is one of the reasons I haven't put it out. Is I kind of need to fix that. I need to find it first. We'll get a replacement from ICM to do that. Yes, that's right. Sorry, Pablo is fussing. So yeah, those are kind of the ones that spring to my mind. Oh, and the Licensor. There's a lot, right? It's finding the time to do all of these is going to be the main challenge, I think, as it is for all of us. So yeah, I think definitely finding the time is. But the Licensor I want to do because it's a bit different. I would kind of like to do the Bulldog as well, but I'm not as enthused to do that as the others. Good question, V Strong. Will the Firefly and Short Skipper get finished? Yes. In fact, the Firefly, I just today when I was at the shop, because it's on my shop bench, the Firefly is not far off actually, because it doesn't need a lot of filling. It's a pretty tight build considering the age of it. I just need to put in the seats, which I've already got, and the other bit of cockpit detail, and then essentially canopies and paint. I have a whole bunch of Falcon canopies, and I'm not sure if I've got a Firefly in there. If I do, I want to change the canopies because that's one of the main, I think, improvements in kits over the last 50 years, let's say. I mean, it's shorter than that, obviously. So I would say 20 years is when kind of most of the improvements came. But any kit over the last 50 years, I think if you can get replacement canopies for something up until 15 years ago or so, and even so, some kits still need replacement canopies now. But generally, the technology of making crisp transparencies has improved markedly compared to the rest of the kit. And that's, I think, where older kits often let themselves down, because some of the older kits, I mean, that Firefly is quite a nice kit. It's not got detail and stuff, but the actual build goes together well. It looks decent. That those transparencies are like thick and have really big ridges for the raised parts. So if I can cut, and of course those were packed. So yeah, the Firefly will definitely get finished. The Short Skipper, yeah, I'll probably do some more live streams on the Skipper next year. Again, it's a matter of it keeps getting packed away, and then it has to get specifically unpacked to do things. Once I'm moved and I'm actually all sorted, it'll be much easier to do all of these because everything will be in its right place, if you like. And that hasn't been the case for the last 18 months really. So yes, they will. It's a matter of getting to that stage where I can lay everything out and get it in its right place. The conservatory, which is going to be my kind of indoor modeling space, because Maria hates conservatories, so it's all mine. It's going to have a couple of the cupboards that we got in the dining room, and at the moment, well, not at the moment, they're empty, but they used to have all of the board games and stuff that my son and I used to play, which are now up in the attic space of the shop. So I got those cabinets completely free for all of my modeling projects. So I'll actually be able to put entire projects in there, and then it's just a matter of like pulling them out and I can start again. So that'll massively improve my workflow. A lot of these things, it's just about getting those systems in place. And if you don't have the room because you're moving, for instance, or, you know, there's other things going on, like divorce. There's been a lot going on for me. And none of that will be around next year, right? My financial settlement for the divorce is all done. The only thing that's left is when my ex sells the house, I'll get some money from her. So that's a good thing. The expenses for the house would have mostly gone. There's a couple of things that need doing, like the bathroom needs a shower in. It's got a shower at the moment, but it's like one of those little electric ones. But it's not a huge draw, you know, in the way that this house has a lot more that needed putting into it. So I'm looking forward to when we are finally moved. Also, we have what I call GigaNet, I think. I've got a high-speed fiber optic broadband connection for the house. So thank you. And fingers crossed, you know, streaming, all that kind of stuff will be all good. We won't have any issues with lag or latency or anything like that, which I was a little bit worried about because the shop doesn't have great internet connection. It's fine for running a business, you know, when you're not streaming and stuff. If I had to rely on that for everything, that would have been more problematic. And I won't, so that's good. Right, okay. Nick, welcome. Did the barge set and some of the building models still available on eBay and superb paper models? So there we go. Somebody on the stream. You know more than Moss. Congratulations. Question, does Tamiya have a parts replacement center in the UK? I do not believe they do. So Tamiya's main importer, their official importer into the UK is the Hobby Company. So they don't, I believe, have a parts replacement center. Everything comes from Japan. So you are best contacting Tamiya directly. I believe, from what I've heard of people who have used it, which aren't that many because generally Tamiya don't have many issues, but I believe they're very good when you contact them. So Brian says, love your work, John Alec. And John said, thank you. And I agree, Brian. John does great work and some really nice builds. Those of you who haven't checked his channel out, I'd recommend you go and pop over to John Alec Scale Modeling. Plus, John's a really nice guy. So one thing I do hope and plan to do next year is to actually go over to the US in August and visit the US Nationals, courtesy of John Alec. So fingers crossed. Looked at flights, should be okay. I need to make sure about timings and things and check that John is okay to host me for an extended period of time, not just a few days of the model show. But that'll be great. So hopefully I can do a bit of a road trip, maybe series for the channel. We'll see. But that'll be pretty good. So I'm really looking forward to that if we get that to come to pass. And I think at the moment Moss is also planning the same thing. So that could be quite a lot of fun, I think. Oh, Steve London says they do hold a certain amount of spares, but you do have to purchase the whole sprue. Hope that helps. Thank you, Steve. That is great. Yes, Pablo. What is it? He's a little bit nervous because his mummy has left, hasn't she? She's gone for Christmas time. But tomorrow we're going to go and visit my mummy, and she can be your surrogate mum. Okay? Yes. That was a bit of a dubious look there, wasn't it? Like, really? You sure about that? Yes, I'm sure. Okay. Everyone's looking at you. He's not really sure what's going on. Okay. Well, we are 10 past the hour, going for just over the 2 hours. So I think I probably should make sure that this man has not left a complete mess downstairs, and do a bit of tidying up, because see, tomorrow I am going to go and get my mother, bring her over for Christmas. I've got my son and his girlfriend are going to come over on Boxing Day, which is when Maria comes back. So we should have a very full house. Oscar and his girlfriend have to stay in this room with these boxes. Still have to unpack their bedding, which is in one of them. But that should be good. It should be good. So I may have to get some Christmas decorations. Because at the moment there's nothing, because of course we didn't think we were going to be here. But anyway, thank you all for joining me tonight, and watch me show you a lot of old stuff and answer various different and diverse questions. I don't know if I'll be doing anything before Christmas. If I do, I'll announce it, obviously, both on the Discord channel, for those of you who are channel members, and on the community page for anybody else. If you are not subscribed or know somebody who you think might like the channel, please do sub to the channel. It's free, obviously. It helps out enormously, and I'm trying to push to that 25k for the end of the year. Only got, what, 12 days, I think, and I'm about 330 subs off that. So it's possible. It's going to be tight. It's going to be a close shave to get there. But if you do know anybody that, well, firstly, if you're not subbed, if you could sub, that would be fantastic. And if you know anybody that might like the channel and would be able to sub as well. 2/3 of people aren't subbed to the channel at the moment, so it's more than possible to get there. It'd be a great impetus, and as I say, I would commit to 25 kits, 25 builds in 2025, if that were the case. So if I don't see you again until after Christmas or in the new year, have a fantastic break. Whatever you're doing, whatever your race, religion, creed, denomination, etc. Have a great one. And if I don't see you before, I'll see you in 2025. If I do see you before, I look forward to that. Okay? Cheers, everybody. Have a good one.